The B.S. Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the B.S. Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The B.S. Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The B.S. Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Not taping this under the best of circumstances today. We just had the Red Sox finish off the most monumental September collapse in baseball history. And I do not think it would be fair if we went through the week without calling my buddy JackO, diehard Yankee fan at work, because if the roles were reversed and the Yankees had collapsed, I would want to hear from him on the podcast. So we're going to call him at work, and hopefully we won't end up killing each other. Joe Mead, let's give him a ring.
All right. And promo?
Complex Litigation, this is John.
Oh, Johnny.
Sweet Caroline.
Oh, God.
Bum.
Come on.
Come on. So good. So good. Sing it with me, Willie. Come on.
I'm only doing this because if the roles were reversed, I'd be mad if I couldn't call you.
Absolutely. You're a stand-up
So
guy. I'm just happy you're doing okay, that you're heard from. I was afraid you and the dog might be like, Oregon, Washington State by now or something. So
we made it to Orange County, and then we came back.
Nice, good long walk. Awesome.
First of all, congratulations on rooting for the first team that actively threw a game since the 1919 Chicago White Sox. Congratulations for that. That must feel good. Who do you think Charlie Sheen's going to play in the movie?
He's definitely going to play Girardi. I think he's too old to be a player at this point, so he's got to be a manager.
That's a good call. Yeah, I could see him being Girardi.
Yeah.
I mean, they threw the game.
I'll be honest with you. I'm old and I have a 2-month-old, so I went to bed at 10:30. The Yankees were winning the game 7-0, and the Red Sox were in a rain delay. It was 3-2, and literally the last thing I saw baseball-wise was Dan Shaughnessy assuring Red Sox Nation that they'd be playing today while talking with Heidi Watney. So that was a fitting end to the 2011 season. So I went to bed fully believing that the Red Sox were going to be in the playoffs. And when I woke up this morning and I turned on the television and I saw the results, I was shocked. And the first thing that occurred to me, I'm like, well, I'm happy about it, obviously, but I'm like, geez, the Yankees blew a 7-0 lead? That's awful. But then I see that it was the B team and the scrubs. Yeah,
and if anything, you could... And by the way, this is what I do. I'm trying to distract from what happened with the Red Sox for as long as I can.
The Yankees who clinched a week ago. Because if the roles were reversed, I'm sure you would have had all the Red Sox would have been in there fighting till the end.
This is why Dave Jacoby calls me a buck passer for this very reason. I'm passing the buck and blaming the Yankees.
Totally.
I thought it was pretty devious what Girardi did. Because as it was happening in the moment, there's so much going on. I'm writing the running diary. Now looking back the next day, the key moment where it became obvious that he was throwing the game, he brought A.J. Burnett in.
Yeah, but he pitched all right, didn't he?
He threw to one batter. He threw 5 pitches.
Just getting loose, keeping that arm fresh.
They took him out. And Michael Kay, who was in on this whole conspiracy, he goes, well, obviously Girardi wanted to see how Burnett would respond if he had to warm up during a game and get a batter out.
Absolutely. He might have to come in and it's a savvy preparation for the off-season.
Or he was trying to use all of his pitchers who might be half decent, so it could get to a point where Scott Proctor would just have to pitch over and over again until the Rays scored.
Hey, that's good baseball. The Yanks have a good record against the Rays. If you can prepare for the postseason, and a nice side benefit of that is that your most hated rival, who couldn't get out of their own way, loses. I mean, it's not our responsibility. This is like when you play blackjack and you're blaming somebody else. You're passing the buck. It's you. You're playing the cards. It's your team. You can't rely on some other team.
Well, we're going to get to my hatred for the Red Sox in a second, but
please
be honest. You didn't know Greg Golson was on your team.
Yeah, he's been there for a while. He's been up and down a couple times this year. They bring him in for base running purposes. Not a bad outfielder, like GG.
Sure. All right, Double G.
Double G.
G baby.
G-Money.
I'm surprisingly chipper today, and I think I know the reason.
You're still drunk.
I mean, I don't mean I'm chipper. I mean, I'm more, in 2003, I had to leave Jimmy Kimmel Live after like 4 hours because I was so distraught I couldn't work and I didn't want to be around anybody.
Right.
And I think after 2 titles, it's, it's just hard to be in that mindset because you're just rooting for more titles and you're rooting for playoff games, and it's doesn't feel quite as life and death as it usually does. But
not to mention the 5 other championships you've won in 3 other sports in the past 10 years.
There's that too. But I think the reason I don't want to say I'm chipper. I want to say I'm like, I feel relieved. I have this strange calm today.
Yeah.
And I think it's because these frauds that I watched for 6 months who completely self-combusted, who choked, who showed no character at all, who blew the most basic baseball plays over the month of September, are now no longer in my life for 6 months or 5 months, however long it is until spring training. And I have a strange sense of peace, Johnny.
You don't have to watch them boot balls and not run out ground balls and have horrific starting pitching. And I can understand that sense of calm.
Yeah, and I don't have to, guys that have good stats, but every time they come up, I know they're going to get an out, and I know exactly how the pitchers are going to pitch to them, and I don't have to have third and first situations in the 9th inning where a guy hits a ball 3 feet. And it's just nice to be able to move on. And
you don't have to worry about the immortal Robert Andino terrorizing your pitching staff any further.
Right, and I don't have to worry about being caught from 9.5 games with a 9.5 game lead by a team that has a payroll that's 1/3 of ours.
Yeah.
So there's a sense of a strange peace, but we did a podcast I think on September 9th, and I remember saying to you on that podcast, even though I was extremely worried about the Red Sox, the good news was that there was no way Tampa could catch them; they were too far back. And then you mentioned how they had 7 games left against Tampa.
Right.
And I remember on the podcast looking up the pitching matchups and going, oh, God, I mean, if we lost 6 of these 7, maybe this isn't over. But never actually thinking that.
No.
As a Yankee fan, how great was this for you?
Oh, it was great. I mean, I'm not going to kid you. It was fantastic. Once I realized that it wasn't like Mariano or Dave Robertson or anybody who will be crucial in the postseason that blew a 7-run lead, I was ecstatic about it because, I mean, going back to last winter, I mean, the trumpeting of Red Sox Nation of their team is, the article I link to every chance I get from Nesson about how they were going to outdo the 27 Yankees, and every single ESPN expert, with the exception of 3 people, I think, picking the Red Sox to win the World Series, and I think those other 3 picking them to at least go to the World Series. And the Boston Herald best team ever headline. I mean, to then not even make the playoffs, I mean, it's just catastrophic. I mean, I think it's just catastrophic for the franchise because they are now hooked into such dogs of contracts and just a mess all around. I'm not sure how you come back from this one. I mean, these things have the tendency to really hurt a franchise long term.
All right, first of all, settle down. Settle down, first of all.
Sorry.
Second of all, I think more embarrassing than the fact that they didn't make the playoffs was the fact that, what was their final record, 90-72?
I think so.
I mean, to win 90 games with that team.
They won one more game this year than last year's injury-ravaged team.
To win 90 games, it's just like, well, people
and go 12-6 against the Yankees and finish, 8 games behind them?
My friends are emailing me. The big debate obviously today is Francona go? What happens? Do we fire him? And I didn't want to write anything definitively last night because I was upset. And you never want to write a heat of the moment type of thing. But I've been thinking about it. I've been talking to people, and it just seems like it's time for them to cut ties with him. And I don't even mean that as like a panic overreaction thing. But when you think they didn't make the playoffs last year. They completely, the biggest collapse in the history of baseball in September this year.
Right.
And then you think of the way Lackey snapped at him last weekend coming off the mound, and Crawford bitching about, I don't want to bat in this spot. I want to bat in this spot. I don't want to play center field. At some point, there's a good dad, bad dad element to coaching.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's been the good dad for too long, and these guys needed a kick in the ass, and he just couldn't give it to them. And you have to blame somebody for something this bad. You just have to. And
well, that's just it. I mean, somebody has to take the fall, and the old cliche is you can't fire all the players. And at a certain point, guys have just been there too long, and it's the same voice over and over again. I mean, the Yankees reached that point with Torrey.
Yep.
The guy won 4 World Series, but basically from 2005 until he left in 2008, his job was on the line every year because it was just a case of, he's been here so long, he doesn't put the fear of God into players anymore. He's great PR-wise in handling the media, but he's not in there flipping tables or he's not, the players have just sort of tuned him out. They don't listen anymore. So you almost need a different voice to bring in there. And I mean, I like Francona. I think he's a good guy to handle the pressure of Boston and all that and coddles the players from the media. But and if you get rid of him, and I think he's going to get fired. I don't think they have any choice. I think somebody has to take the fall.
Yes.
But I don't know who you bring in. I mean, if you bring in Bobby Valentine there, that's going to be comical to watch because that's a night and day situation going from Francona to Bobby Valentine. And his intensity and the intensity of Boston, I'm not sure that's a good mix. So I don't know who you bring in unless the computer will spit out somebody, some bench coach for some team that I don't know, and he'll be the new manager because he follows the computer models or whatever. But
right.
I mean, I don't know who the guy is. There's no big name to go chase. Is there out there?
I have, as I said, it's just something I've just been thinking. It's not even. It's 10 o'clock on the West Coast right now in the morning.
Yeah, it's too early. Sure.
I've been up for 2.5 hours, and I've come to phase A of trying to figure out what the F just happened.
Yes.
And it's clear that Francona needs to go. And it's not that he's a bad manager. He had a great run. I'm very happy with the 8 years he had. 8 years, 7, 04 to 11, 04, 8 years.
Yeah.
But you need a fall guy for this, and I don't think that's an overreaction to say that. Like, you were at this point with Joe Torre after 2005. Deep down, you knew that this guy shouldn't manage the Yankees anymore, and you said that. We talked about that. This is before I had a podcast, but you could just at some point you pass the point of no return, and it gets stale, and the good guy routine only goes so far, and that you just need somebody new. It's baseball. Guys need to be kicked in the butt. The Red Sox, to me, just looked like a team that I thought they rolled over. I really did. They choked. They got 3 guys thrown out last night on the base pass. 3. They had multiple situations, where you have third and first with no outs, second and first with no outs, and just didn't come through, and it was against a crap team. Mm-hmm. The Orioles are not good. That's not a team you should blow the game 162 to. It's just not.
No. It was Buck Showalter's World Series, but even so, I mean, I watched the game before the game they won when we were going to retire Ryan Lavarnway's number after one game, and I was obviously rooting for the Orioles to win, and I was like, God, that team is just brutal. Like, what am I thinking of? Like, putting all my hopes on the Baltimore Orioles because that team is brutal.
Yeah, they're pretty bad.
So you deserve to not make the playoffs when you lose 2 out of 3 games in the final crucial series of the season to that team.
I mean, you could talk like big picture decisions. Aceves was the best reliever the Red Sox had the last 2 months and should have been starting. And even if it was a 5-inning start or a 6-inning start, I just feel like the options were so bad.
Yeah.
You had to start him. It's more important to have a starter than a long reliever. The reason we know this is we pay more money for starters than long relievers. They're more valuable.
See, they're all obsessed with this thing now of, well, he wasn't stretched out to, he's just a reliever, and there's different exercises and routines they do to be a starter versus being a reliever. But I mean,
please,
at a certain point, you get the ball and throw the ball until you're tired.
Yeah, and I would say they did that to him the last 4 games of the season.
Anyway,
he pitched every day.
Right.
So to say like you're afraid to stretch the guy out, you beat him into the ground. And if they had gone into the playoffs, I think he would have been dead anyway, which is probably one of the good reasons, or not one of the reasons. This was more of a mercy killing than anything. But
right.
So he botched a couple of those big picture ones. He never settled on the order. Gonzalez, who just it was an empty calories guy the second half of the season, and
totally.
There's a lot of stuff floating around that he's hurt. He had a calf injury, shoulder bothering him, but everybody was pitching him low and away, and he couldn't hit the pitch.
Right.
So at some point, you had to stop putting him in a situation where he was coming up with all these guys in base. You move him down the order, move him up, whatever.
Apparently the problem for him was there was too many late games on ESPN. Did you see that quote today?
That's
fantastic. That's the greatest thing I've ever read. We play for the Red Sox. You're on ESPN too late at night, and we get into places 4 a.m, and it's not fair because the Padres are never on ESPN at night, and they're never tired.
They should have all agreed not to talk to the press last night. I would have been fine with it. Just do a 25-man embargo.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Yeah, and the way it ended was just kind of fitting. The only way it would have been more fitting is if Lackey had been in the 12th inning and Lackey had thrown the pitch that led to Carl Crawford, the Gold Glove left fielder. It just couldn't have been worse. Either just one-hop it and you're throwing home with momentum, or dive and catch it. But he went in that limbo, half-assed,
That's going to be interesting to see what his next 5 or 6, whatever is left on that contract, years are like. I mean, does he work hard in the offseason to turn it around, or is he just, is he Ed Whitson for the Yankees where he just can't play in Boston and he's just done? Is that it? Which way is it going to go for him?
I theorized in the column today that I put up that I don't think he ever wanted to sign with the Red Sox. And I know it's like the armchair psychologist, but
yeah, no, I saw that. He wanted to go to Anaheim, and then Boston blew him away with the most money, and he's like, I can't turn it down, or his agent's like, you can't turn it down.
He was going to Anaheim. He was going to play with his buddy Torrey Hunter, and it would have been great. He would have been out of the spotlight. He would have been a big guy for them on the base pass. It felt like the right fit. And then the Red Sox just said, here's a ton of money. Just come play with us. Here's more money than anybody's offering you by far. Just come play with us. And he took it, and I don't think he ever felt right about it. And I actually felt kind of bad for him. I really did. Like, it's weird to feel bad for him, but his, Lackey I never felt bad for. I just felt like the way he showed up his teammates and stuff was so indefensible. And he sucks. He's a guy that just should not be a major league pitcher anymore.
Yeah.
Crawford seems redeemable. I actually think they can turn Crawford around potentially.
Might be able.
Lackey's done.
He's irredeemable. But what do you do with Lackey? You literally cannot give him away. You could, but you're going to pay 90% of his salary.
Well, fortunately, Johnny, we have a lot of experience with overpaying for useless starting pitchers.
Good point.
One of the themes of the last couple of years. We just look at what we did with Daisuke.
And actually, you've shown a willingness to pay players to play for other teams like Manny and Renteria and Lugo. So I suppose you're willing to do it with Lackey, too. Plus, Theo still has a lot of assistant GMs all over the league, so he can do like a Rizzo for Gonzalez deal with Lackey.
Well, that's the part that I don't think we'll ever have an answer for. I don't know. What
would have happened if Anthony Rizzo was on the team?
Well, I'm going to think about that all winter. But I don't know how much blame Theo gets for this, because the Lackey signing, in my mind, was one of those signings where the owner was like, we got to do something. We have all this money. What are you going to do? You got to do it. Well, we can't come out of this empty-handed. What are you doing? Mm-hmm. And that led to overpaying Lackey. This winter, there's no question that, the owners were freaking out. The Celtics were hot. The Pats were hot. The Bruins were coming on as this young, hot team in Boston. And the Red Sox were threatening to become the 4th most relevant team in the city. And they clearly wanted to make a splash, which they did with the Gonzalez trade, which was defensible, and the Crawford signing, which was not as defensible.
I don't like Theo. I don't like his computers and his system. I don't like his condescension. I don't like his PR apparatus where they have magazine articles about how they're so much smarter than every other team in baseball, and all his Ivy League eggheads, and they're so much smarter than all these old baseball guys. And, the overall looking down your nose at everybody else drives me right up a wall, and the boy genius and touting himself. But, to kill him now, basically, is the biggest job of 2020 hindsight ever, because in December, I live here in New England. In December, when they signed Crawford a couple days after they traded for Gonzalez, people were like throwing roses at his feet and hosannas about what a wonderful team it was, and they were so good. There wasn't anybody that questioned those moves.
I questioned the Crawford a tiny bit just by saying it
well,
was
people
like,
question the amount of money they gave him, I think, but not the fact that they did it.
They didn't need him. It was, I called it a luxury yacht purchase, which is if your
like
team's going to overpay if your team's going to overpay for guys that, it's not like he didn't make sense, but it was a guy they certainly didn't need, and it was money they certainly need to spend, but they did it. It's hard to get mad at your team. But that same logic was what led you down the road with the Yankees in the 80s to where you guys ended up.
Of course,
so at some point you're going to pass a point where it gets a little scary.
I mean, he can be blamed. He can be blamed for the fact that you're running Andrew Miller and Weiland out there.
Yes.
And his farm system hasn't developed anybody in forever.
Yes.
But
they've developed a couple people that they've used in trades, but there hasn't been. It's not stocked. Put it that way.
Right, and when your claim to fame is allegedly what a good drafter and scout you are, and finding all this talent and homegrown and all that, and you really haven't developed anybody of late. I mean, he can take some heat for that, but I mean, there was nobody that was killing him for any of these moves, and he's had some. I mean. I saw numbers today in the Boston Globe where it's like $500 million in just horrific contracts. I mean, horrific contracts, $500 million that he spent on just players that have been terrible. But, that's such a 20/20 hindsight deal because there was nobody that hated signing Crawford or Gonzalez or any other moves that they made. I don't think at the time there was people that hated him signing Lackey. You had comments about how people in Anaheim were like,
I didn't like that
good
part.
riddance, good luck. But
that made me nervous. Yeah, if we hadn't won in 2007, Theo would have been just getting crushed for the moves from 2005. These big contracts that they've been handing out, and I think he's made probably more. I'd have to see the complete list. It's at least an argument between the bad moves versus the good moves. I think that. And
2007, they always say. He was off in the gorilla suit being a roadie for Pearl Jam when they made the Beckett trade that he was supposedly against. And they got Beckett and Lowell, which is the whole reason they won it in 2007.
True.
For the most part.
He gets credit for, Ellsbury and Pedroia.
Oh, sure.
And all that stuff. But I think that if you look at this year specifically, the biggest mistake they made was Bedard because, they had enough assets to go after and get somebody. And they made that deal with 1 minute to spare. And for me personally, as a Red Sox fan, I just thought I thought they needed somebody that I knew was going to be pitching in September. And Bedard is somebody that just couldn't stay healthy. You look at what happened with Detroit getting Doug Fister. Yeah. And I get the risk with Doug Fister. He was pitching in Safeco. Nobody knew if his stats were legitimate or not. Maybe he goes to Fenway versus Detroit Stadium, and maybe those stats are different. He loses his confidence. He's a disaster. I get all that. But that trade worked out for Detroit, and Bedard did not work out for the Red Sox. And I think, you just look at that. You had a choice between those two guys. They probably cost right around the same. Maybe Fister was a tiny bit more, but they went for the wrong guy. They tried to hit a home run with the guy who could potentially be healthy. And like he's done his whole career, he got hurt. So I think he gets killed for that. I think it's, year after year of these Darnell McDonalds and these guys that just, the Scott Whelans and these guys that just never seem to be. Aceves was the only kind of gem they found this year. It seems like we're a long way from 2003 when he was just finding gems left and right. Part of me wonders if the league's just smart now. Everybody's on to the same ways to find guys.
Everybody's a Moneyball person. Yeah, that's part of it. The league caught up to them, I guess. Or maybe he wasn't as good as advertised. I don't think
he was pretty good those first couple years.
I don't think he's getting fired, though. Do you?
No, because I really don't think that he would have made a couple of those big moves that they made the last 2 years if he wasn't getting pressure from the owners. Because it's ironic. Seth Nukin wrote that book, Feeding the Monster, in 2005, and the Red Sox have kind of created a monster because they have this monolith with Nesson and the park, the advertising and all that stuff, and they do need to feed that. And that's when you start making these big ass moves and these high risk
They're not so much
moves.
baseball related as they are entertainment related.
Yeah, and it's also like, what's the track record of just putting together a super team, like in any sport? Like, Miami, like Philadelphia Eagles right now. And
I know. I would dread being called the dream team from now on. Like the Miami Heat, oh my God, they're going to win 5 rings, and they didn't win.
Right.
The Red Sox, what a juggernaut. Look at this dream team. The Philadelphia Eagles, their offensive line is porous. They signed Asamoah and Rogers Cromartie. Oh my God, what a team! But
right.
Vic, $100 million contract. But yeah, please don't ever call one of my favorite teams a dream team.
It's bad. Yeah, it's bad to be in pole position.
Yes,
it is. It's bad to have everybody pointing at you and go, "Oh, I don't see how this team doesn't win 108 games."
Maybe it's pack journalism. There's just too much hype. And everybody just jumps on that. Oh yeah, that guy's saying they're great. I guess they're great. I'm gonna write the same article. 116
On the other hand,
wins.
you could argue that the Red Sox didn't have a really truly great guy in this team other than the season Ellsbury had. But Beckett and Lester had multiple chances the past 3 weeks to put everybody on their back and just shut somebody down and save the bullpen. And neither of them pitched a great game.
Well, I'd like the record to reflect, and my tweets will reflect this, that from the very first day of the season, I wasn't buying into all the Red Sox hype. I pointed out that I didn't think they had any position player that was vastly superior to his Yankee counterpart.
Yeah.
I think that's been borne out, Billy. I also talked about how everybody was picking them, and that's never a good thing. Of course, I'm always going to say that about any Red Sox team, but so.
No, it's not a good thing. I think the one thing that I didn't anticipate, and I still think the Gonzalez trade was the right trade, and he if you look at how he performed in San Diego last year, when they had their little collapse down the stretch in September, and he was in all those big games, he had an awesome year for them, but supposedly he didn't have a lot of big hits for them either. It's unclear if I worry about these guys that have just never been in pressure situations, and then all of a sudden they're in the pressure situation. You just don't know until it happens. It's not like he was a disaster. Like, he finished with great stats.
No, the guy hit 340.
Times.
It was a quiet 340 in the second half, but it was still 340. And he put the team on his back for the month of May, basically. The problem with that deal from their perspective is because they have Euclid and Big Papi.
Right.
Euclid had to play third base, and honestly, from the beginning of the year, I think Euclid's days at third base are behind him. I don't think his body can take the wear and tear there. He's a first base / DH guy, but they have 3 of those guys with him, Big Papi, and Gonzalez. So they can't have 3 guys playing first base and DHing.
That's where I was going with the Gonzalez thing. First of all, you look at what Longoria did for Tampa in September. He just put the team on his back.
Right. And
especially in the biggest game of this season. I don't know if Gonzalez has that in him or not. We just didn't see it this year, but that was the guy he was billed to be. And then second, I think the underrated part of that trade was moving Euclid to third. I didn't really totally think about this until Kevin Millar said on my podcast a few weeks ago, and he intimated that Euclid was really bummed out by the Gonzalez signing, and that playing third every day is a much bigger toll on your body. And then you look at the season he had 15 injuries by August, and it's clear that he is a first base DH. And now they're in this situation where this could really get out of hand because they have to decide what to do with Ortiz.
Oh, yeah.
And if they bring back Ortiz and they have Euclid, who clearly is not cut out to play third base day in and day out, and who also isn't a great third baseman, that's starting to feel like a Yankees situation.
Yeah.
Where you have 4 DHs on your team. Now you have Lavarnway, too. The logical move would be to either trade Euclid or let Ortiz go. And I have this sinking feeling they're just going to bring them both back and hope it works out, which I think would make it worse.
Well, the problem is you can't. I don't know what you can get for Euclid now after this season, and with a lot of injuries the past couple seasons.
Yeah,
you're not exactly trading him as in the stock analogy when he's up high. You're trading him when he's really low. So
I wouldn't say it's really low. I think he had injuries. I think he'd have real value as somebody who gets on base and hits for power and is a really good first baseman. There's a market for him, right?
Health is an issue, though.
Yeah, I guess. I don't think he's going to age that well.
The other day I sent you this email. This. If I was the Yankees GM, this is what I would do: is I would make a Godfather offer to Big Papi.
Oh God.
Because because he could be the DH at Yankee Stadium, where his left-handed swing in the short right field porch, he would hit 40 home runs.
He
absolutely murders the Yankees every single year, so he'd be removed from the Red Sox lineup, which would be a lot weaker without him hitting fifth.
Right.
It would kill Red Sox Nation because Big Papi is the most beloved Red Sox of the past 20 years.
By the way, I can vouch when they signed Louis Tiant, who wasn't even that awesome for the Yankees. It was soul crushing.
Absolutely, and this would be even more soul crushing.
Yes.
And to see Big Papi in the pinstripes, and if nothing else, it drives up the price for the Red Sox. I don't see the downsides for the Yankees because it's just money to them. Who cares if he clogs up the DH spot?
You just described every reason why I wanted them to severely overpay for Mariano Rivera.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what makes me mad about these last 2 years. Like, you think of all the money they threw around. Why not just offer Rivera $90 million for 3 years? So is there a safer bet in sports that Mariano Rivera is going to be a good closer? And then trade Papelbon. It kills the Yankees. I would have much rather seen them do that than some of these predictable, like the Lackey thing. God.
What are they going to do about Papelbon?
Well, that's another issue.
Back, right?
This is the problem, is that you're in a situation now because Bard was so bad down the stretch. He single-handedly lost 4 games. And his velocity went down, and I don't trust him as the closer next year. And now all of a sudden you're looking at 3 years, $45 million for Papelbon or whatever that's going to cost.
Yeah.
I mean, Drew comes off.
14.
Ortiz comes off, but they might bring him back.
Yeah.
You're in the last year at Dice K, but really they already paid that money. His actual salary is not that big.
Mm-hmm.
And then Scudero comes off, I think.
I actually saw it on the Boston Globe today. They have like $52 million coming off the books, but some of that, what's his name, Pedroia gets a raise of like $2.5 million, and
Ellsbury has arbitration.
Gonzo gets a $7 million raise, and then Ellsbury and other guys go to arbitration. They're going to get a huge bump up, but they've got some money to play with.
You'd think.
You would think so.
But it's one of those fork in the road winners, though. Because if you just run it back with Ortiz and Papelbon and bring back Francona, why am I not going to think that this is going to happen again? I mean, you could say, oh, well, Buchholz got hurt, Yuka's got hurt. Well, guys got hurt every year in baseball. You guys played without A-Rod for 3 months.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It happens. Believe me, Jimmy.
It
happens in the baseball season.
It's a long season.
Yeah, I mean, and we talk about, Lackey sucked. Like, so did A.J. Burnett. Like, the Yankees did all right. They won 98 games.
Right.
So, and the difference with the Yanks, I felt like, you guys had guys come up during the year that gave you a little boost. Like, Nova came back from AAA, and even though he'll never be a lights-out guy, he's just started winning games, and he won every time he pitched. You look at what Montero did. Mm-hmm. Montero really helped you.
Yeah, he's gonna be big in the postseason, hopefully.
That's why I don't think you'll sign Ortiz, by the way, because it makes much more sense to make Montero the DH.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really going to happen. It's just a fantasy of mine. Although it
would be good. It would be a good power play, but
although if Montero has a good postseason, then you call up Seattle and say, "What do you think, Felix, Montero? Any interest? You're interested once."
That's pretty interesting. That Seattle's are in a situation where they have Smoke, though, who's probably destined to be a DH. But I mean, you're right. They could shop Montero around.
Big Papi. Oh my God, so happy.
Well, you guys need a third starter.
Well, I mean, the happiest guy, as I said on Twitter, the happiest guy in America is Dan Shaughnessy because he can hook in the fact that Babe Ruth was born in Baltimore, so Curse of the Bambino can go into a 5th reprinting.
Yeah.
But the second happiest guy is C.J. Wilson's agent. Because the Yankees and the Red Sox are going to give him about $120 million contract, outbidding each other for him because he's the only competent starter on the market.
And he's somebody that the Sabre guys actually like.
Not to mention that
he translates better than Lackey did and some of the other guys. But to me, it still feels like I just don't like when you have these starting pitchers who aren't quite at that Sabathia level or that Roy Halladay level or even the Cliff Lee level. They're one level below. And I'm sure somebody could point to Sabre stats that would say C.J. Wilson's on that level, but to me it doesn't totally pass the eye test. When I watch him, I don't feel like, oh my God, we can't get a hit off this guy. I just think he's a level below. He's not at the Felix level, that's for sure.
No, he doesn't put the fear of God into you when you look in the paper and say, the Red Sox are facing C.J. Wilson tonight.
But on the other hand, he's been really good now, and he'd certainly be a great number 2 starter for the Yankees or the Red Sox. He's going to get overpaid by $30 million, and the track record just isn't great. It's not. When you overpay for starting pitchers, it almost seems like it has some sort of weird mental effect on him.
What about if Sabathia opts out? I mean, I think he wants to be in New York, and I think he'll stay at the Yankees. He just wants a raise.
Right.
How about if he opts out and the Red Sox have dinner with him during the winter meetings?
Well, first of all, he would be a moron not to opt out.
Yeah, of course.
Because all he's doing is adding more years to that contract at the same money or slightly bigger.
Right.
I think he goes back to the Yankees. I think
so too, because I think he's happy there and he wants to be there. But
what do you think about an A.J. Burnett for John Lackey trade?
No, I wouldn't do it. No, God, no.
You wouldn't do it?
No, my God, no.
Because
A.J. Burnett can show you flashes of being good. I mean, Lackey didn't even have flashes, and his body language and like throwing his arms up when somebody boots a ball. No way.
Yeah, but still.
Showing up the manager. We don't want any part of that. Come on.
Well, those are some good points, Johnny.
A.J. Burnett just stinks, but at least he's doesn't seem like a bad guy.
I'd like to thank you for leaving out that he had the highest ERA of anyone who pitched 150 innings or more
that
ever.
Too. A.J. Burnett's a bargain by comparison. Plus, I think A.J. only has 2 years left on his contract, and Lackey has 3.
What if we throw in Scott Weiland?
Well, now you're talking.
Scott
now I'm interested. Now I'm listening. That's only because I was a big Temple Pilots fan.
Yeah, Scott.
Kyle
Weiland. Kyle Weiland. I tweeted the other day. I tweeted Andrew Marchand instead of Brad Marchand, and people are like, "You're a fake Bruins fan," all that stuff. Like, I mess up names all the time. I called my son Ben Rufus 4 days ago. Like, you're not dealing with somebody who's operating at full IQ capacity anymore. I don't know. Getting up at 6 o'clock every day has just ruined my brain.
You're getting older. You've got 2 kids. You can be forgiven if you didn't remember Brad or whatever his name is, Marchand's name.
Well, I can be forgiven and I can't.
Right on his tattoo, so.
I can be forgiven and I can't because this is the same stuff I used to make fun of Eddie Edelman for 20 years ago. But he used to do this all the time, and he would call D. Brown, Doug Brown, and all this stuff. Like, oh, my God, put a fork in Eddie Edelman, and now I guess I'm Eddie Edelman.
I can't wait to drive home tonight and listen to EEI. I might have to stop and get a pack of cigarettes, and I don't even smoke.
Well, how are you feeling about the playoffs?
Well, to be honest with you, I mean, I don't love the Yankees' chances, but I think to a large degree they're playing with house money because nobody expected anything out of them this year. I mean, there was a lot of prognostication that they weren't even going to make the playoffs. Yeah. So to win the AL East and have the Red Sox not make it is like anything from here on in is gravy. I would much rather be playing Texas than Detroit because I guess they're both hot now, but I don't know. Texas doesn't really scare me. I know they eliminated the Yankees last year, but they still don't scare me. Whereas Detroit with Verlander and Cabrera, they make me nervous. Leland, I like Jim Leland.
I thought about this yesterday as I kept flashing the Detroit-Texas stuff and who I'd want to play, who I wouldn't want to play, and all that. To me, the Tigers, I think I rather would have played them, even with the Verlander thing. Yeah, because they were in a bad division, and they kind of had it locked up for 2 months, and I think you play a little bit more loosely when you know where things are headed and all that. And I think if you can beat Verlander in Game 1,
if the Yankees could ever steal one tomorrow night, that would be my God.
That's the thing. That's like
the door.
The way that team is built, it's like that that Rocky Drago moment. He's just he's cut. The Russian is cut. Like if you can somehow get him out of the game without him killing you in Game 1. And you flip that and you win Game 1, I think that entire Tiger fan base collapses. And, that's the other thing you have in your favor is you have Detroit sports right now. And this could be a good thing or a bad thing for Detroit. I don't know. I don't know how it plays out. But, they're so fired up about the Lions right now. They're so fired up for the Tigers. And on paper it looks so good, but this is a city that's really had struggles for 15, 16, 17 years now, ever since the Bad Boy Pistons. And
you just made me a lot more nervous because I didn't think about that. But now maybe you have like the Saints after Katrina thing where they won the Super Bowl. Maybe it's like the Tigers.
Could be
the failing auto industry and the carcass that is Detroit.
I forget when the
I just locked out of the playoffs. Right now, it's over. It's done.
I forget when the last Red Wings title was. Joe Meade, when was the last Red Wings Cup?
Yeah, but that's
just a couple of years ago. I can look it up.
Oh, was it a couple of years ago?
No American city's going to rally around a hockey thing, though. Really.
Well, but they love the Red Wings, though.
Yeah,
I was thinking more like the futility of the Lions and the Tigers have had. They went into that World Series as the heavy favorites and they lost, and I just think it seems like there's a general malaise with Detroit, what's going on with the city and all that stuff, and sports has kind of rallied that city. And that you can't find a city that's more fired up than Detroit right now at this moment. And if the Yankees just tag Verlander in that first game, I really do think it'll send everyone back into oh God.
Let all the air out of the room.
The one thing though is they have Cabrera. Doesn't Cabrera kill you? I might be totally wrong, but I feel like he kills you.
He puts up good numbers against the Yankees.
How you feel about Doug Fister?
Not worried about him, frankly.
He's been.
I know he's been good, and I know he's good in Seattle, but I'm not going to worry about Doug Fister.
You're not going to worry about Doug?
No. He doesn't scare
me. What about the Tigers bullpen? How about Jose Valverde?
I want to see him do it in a big spot. I know he's saved 47 out of 47 or whatever it is now, but I want to see him do it at Yankee Stadium in a big situation. Anyone
else who worries you on that team? Any hitters?
Well, Victor Martinez is pretty good. He's got the 47 handshakes and stuff.
That'll be a bonus for the playoffs. I'd like to see if he has any playoff handshakes. Yeah, I gotta be honest. We could have used him down the stretch of this season.
Yeah, he could have loosened people up with some handshakes.
The team was.
Who else do they have?
Grim.
Do they still have Ordonez? I don't even know who's on the Tigers. I probably should.
Joe Meade, when was the last Cup?
2007-08.
No, 3 years ago.
Yeah, I rescind those comments. In my defense, that was post-lockout.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, it was more to do with the Lions and the Tigers and what happened to the Pistons. They couldn't even sell them, and it just seemed like there was definitely a general malaise. The Lions especially. I mean, no team had a more grim run over the last 12 years than the Lions. Sorry, Joe Meade, that's true. Don't throw the Bills at me. Joe Meade.
Okay.
The Lions. That car commercial with Eminem where like Detroit's on the comeback trail. I'm nervous now. Is Eminem going to throw out a first pitch or anything? Kid Rock.
Joe Meade, you never had anything as bad as Matt Millen, Joe Meade.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess
Norwood was worse, but I mean these last 12 years, the Matt Millen thing trumped anything Buffalo had to offer.
Well, Buffalo quietly had awful drafts, for the last 10 years.
Plus, the owner wants to move him to Canada. That's troubling.
That's not true, Johnny.
Joe Meade, maybe we're headed toward a stretch here where all the tortured teams are now going to kind of do their thing. Like you have the Cavaliers won the lottery, the Bills are 3-0, Detroit's on the rise. Maybe this is where this is going.
Or you think it's going to be a Brewers-Tigers World Series?
The Brew Crew is back.
One last run with Prince Fielder.
I got to say, the Brewer fans are going to be mad. They're going to think I'm going to jinx their team, but I'm hopping on that bandwagon for the playoffs. I'm probably going to bet them, and how can you not root for the Brewers in general? It's such a lovable team, great city, most fun I've ever had at a baseball game probably that wasn't a Fenway game.
Absolutely. We tailgated that game. That was, gotta like Milwaukee.
They tailgate for baseball games. How can you not root for that team? I love Prince Fielder. That's the guy I'm kind of secretly worried you guys are going to sign.
Prince Fielder?
Yeah, the
thing is, the Yankees don't need a DH. And there's nowhere to play Prince Fielder because they want to keep the DH thing open. So that's why my Ortiz fantasy is not going to happen. Although now they have Montero, but allegedly they didn't want to have a DH who, they didn't want to have a guy clog the DH role because they want to use it for Jeter and A-Rod to get days off at DH. So I don't think they're going to go after him.
You think
he's a possibility for you guys? Let Big Papi go and bring in Prince Fielder?
Well, then you'd still be in the same situation where you have to trade Youkilis.
Well, that's true.
I don't know what they'd do. I just think that I don't root for anybody to get fired unless it's Mike Dunleavy, but or Pete Carroll. But
I was going to say you root for people to get fired all the time.
yeah, I don't know what I'm saying.
That's
I
off the
slept
top of
4
my head.
hours last night. Slept 4 hours and waiting for the coffee to kick in still. I just said Detroit had had a good time in 20 years and they won a Stanley Cup 3 years ago.
True.
But it's time to part ways with Mr. Francona, and I am confident that he could easily do the year of TV on Baseball Tonight, followed by a $20 million job a year later. And
he'll get hired. I mean, he could probably have either Chicago job if he wanted it, right? The White Sox or the Cubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could probably he could get fired today and have a job by Saturday.
Now the interesting one is Theo, because if I were Theo, I would be leaving tread marks. Like, what else can he do with the Red Sox? They won 2 titles. He ended the phony curse of the Bambino. He brought Red Sox fans more joy than they ever expected they'd have in their lives. And everything else is like he can't win. All he can win is if they win more titles. If he goes to the Cubs and he ends the Cubs thing and he becomes the hero there, and he's the guy who's the GM for the Red Sox and the Cubs when they won World Series, he becomes immortal.
Oh, my God, you're in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, that would be tempting, I think. If you're the guy that ended 86-year drought with the Red Sox and then you're the guy that ended a 100-year-plus drought with the Cubs, if you're that guy, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's the
and more
stuff
importantly,
legend.
the Red Sox are like, it's almost like you leased an apartment that turned out not to be the right neighborhood or whatever, but you have 6 months left in the lease and you kind of want to break it. He'd kind of be breaking the lease by leaving the Red Sox, but it's legal in baseball. He was the Lackey and this inflexible roster and Crawford and another year of Dice K and it would just be so hard to fix this team and make it right without making some real high risk moves that it's almost easier to just say, I'm gonna go to Chicago.
Yeah.
I get like a 5-year grace period in Chicago as we try to figure this out.
He leaves a cocoon too because he's so enmeshed with like Henry and Lucchino and Werner. I mean, wasn't he like an intern with those guys? And I don't know if they paid for him to go to Yale or they told him to go to Yale Law School. And like, it's like Batman and Robin. Like he's like their ward, you know?
Yeah.
To leave that's a big call. But if you could turn the Cubs around after turning around the Red Sox, I mean, you would deserve all the hosannas that the media throws at him right now.
Well, I'd wish you the best for the playoffs, but I wouldn't mean it.
That's true.
I'm probably going to root for I'm rooting for a Tigers-Brewers World Series.
All right.
I think that would be fun. I'd like to see one of those two fan bases win. I like the whole Middle America thing. I like the fact that Fox would be just so bummed out.
Yeah.
Hey, Fox, maybe you should have rigged that Orioles game last night. Hey, last thing, I saw you last week, not under the greatest circumstances.
No, sadly.
Your father passed away.
Indeed, unfortunately.
Relatively sudden. He had been in a little bit failing health the last few years, but still.
Right. But it was unexpected.
Yeah, 36 hours. And just want to, I already said this to you, but I don't think people on the podcast know that. Just want to give you the best from the B.S. Report family.
Thank you.
Handle yourself with a lot of dignity.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
At the Mass, you gave a speech. The mayor came.
Yes.
It was good. It was.
Now he had a good life. My father. He was a good guy. He went far too soon. But yeah, I appreciate you coming all the way from California and all the other people that were there for us. So, that meant a great deal. And we got through it as best we could as we continue to do so. So.
Yeah, and to be honest, it kind of puts all this stupid sports stuff in perspective a little bit.
That's why. As happy as I would like to be about the Red Sox, it's a little bit tinged with some sadness, obviously. So.
And for me, like you always talk about sports isn't life or death, but to go fly back last week and see your family, and you've 36 hours basically to say goodbye to somebody. Right.
Yeah, no, it pales in comparison. That certainly is the case. So it's a fun distraction, and but I wish I could be enjoying it all the more. So. Yeah,
for me, not I'm not. I don't mean to get emotional in podcasts.
No, it's okay.
Obviously we're both only children, both close to our dad. So I was feeling for you.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Thank you for being there for me.
And that was it on the BS Report.
All right, very good.
I will call you during the playoffs. Hopefully
Excellent.
The Yankees will lose, and you can be commiserating about their failures like
Absolutely.
we did today. But I think it's a two-way street. I was man enough to call you.
You did. I got to give it to you. You
Yeah.
did not shy away.
All right, hang in there, John. I'll talk to
All
you
right,
soon.
thanks, buddy.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the B.S Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.